I'm Jamie O'Kane, CPA, Small Business Advanced Tax Planning and Compliance Extraordinaire, and this is the Abundant Beans Podcast, the podcast that takes my love for learning what makes people tick while digging into the good, bad, and ugly of small business ownership. We strive to give you the insight that only those in the trenches of being and working with entrepreneurs can provide. Today, I'd like to welcome to the podcast Tami McVay. Tami is a business and lifestyle strategist who supports entrepreneurs who are ready to up their game personally, mentally, professionally, and need help taking it to the next level. From Marine to mentor, Tami knows what courage, confidence, and commitment it takes to keep driving to make your life and the lives around you better. Through her unique adventure retreats and mentoring, Tami helps people become the leader of their lives. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited. I have so many questions. So first question's always the same. What was your first job?
My very first job was Burger King.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I've worked there for 2.5 years, believe it or
wow.
not, like all through high school. And as I've gone on my journey, I actually reflect on that time a lot. Like, what was it that I loved about that job? Mm-hmm. And it was just that game, that rush, you know, trying to beat drive-through times, like silly things, but and then interacting with people.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
It's so funny. I do find, like, and I say this all the time, but like what we kind of our first jobs a lot of the time kind of lead into where we end up in life. Mm-hmm. I've had so many people on the podcast have been like, you know, at a mowing, or I was selling lemonade, or I was like, you know, I've been an entrepreneur since I was born, basically. Mm-hmm. And so I, you know, sold lemonade, or I did whatever that was entrepreneurial, and then they end up, you know, going to corporate or whatever, and then running their own businesses. So I just think it's very interesting. I worked in a lot of restaurants too.
Well, I've had a really diverse background, and so it's not like one thing has really led to the other, but now, like, just pulling in pieces of all those journeys, it's been great.
Yeah, it's interesting how they all kind of create something different. Mine's pretty diverse too. So tell us a little about your time in the Marine Corps, and what characteristics did that time or experience enhance in you, just like we were talking about.
Yeah. So when I was in high school, I was an honor student, but my family didn't have money. And so to me, college was like this big expensive thing. You needed to know what you wanted to do. And the military had always intrigued me, serving my country. And I wanted to go in the Air Force. But the Air Force recruiter told me I could be a secretary or a cook. And I'm like, well, I don't want to do that.
You're like, I'm not too tall to fly.
Yeah. And so then the Army recruiter, like, he kept hitting on me. And it was creepy. And so I didn't even want to go in the Army. And so I just thought, okay, that's it. And then, like, the Marines, I thought, those guys are crazy. And my boyfriend in high school, his sister was a Marine.
Oh, wow.
And so she came to visit. She was stationed in Hawaii. She was pretty. She's having the time of her life. I'm like, oh, I can do that. So I joined the Marine Corps, and she was in admin, HR, so basically a secretary. But at that point, I hadn't even thought about that anymore. I just knew that that's what I wanted.
You're like, I just don't want to cook.
Yeah, I don't cook now. So I remember sitting at the dining room table with my mom and the recruiter, and my mom said, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And I said, "If I don't do this, I won't do anything." Why I thought that, I don't know, but I just remember that moment vividly. And so looking back, I just realized, like, how much that shaped me at such a young age. I enlisted when I was 17. Wow. And just my confidence and my drive. And, you know, I'm not going to complain about things. I'm going to just drive through and make it happen. And I just know that I can get through things. And I took that for granted. Yeah. When you're so young, you do what you do.
Interesting. You were just saying you could pick a Marine out.
Oh, yes.
And you all have a bearing that's just very, like, confident and solid. And I think that's probably how you're picking out other Marines. But you can tell, like, you know,
it's very
there's
different.
Something about, like, the way you guys carry yourselves.
And even, you know, I do a lot of work now with different veterans. And when I was in the Marine Corps, I was only around Marines. But now that I've gotten older and I've done different things, like, one thing I'm really grateful for is the Marine Corps really instills this sense of tradition and this loyalty to the Marine Corps. And so the Marines, like, it could be the Marine Corps birthday and I may never met them, but let's go have a beer. Like, it's just how we are. Whereas a lot of the other branches, they're loyal to each other that they've served with, but not necessarily like the Army or the Navy.
Yeah.
It's those guys they were, served in combat with. Like that's the closest I've seen that kind of bond.
There's less Marines though, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, there's a lot
the
less.
Women Marines make up 0.0003% of the population.
It's crazy. Of the military population? Or of the Marine population?
U.S. population.
Holy cow.
Yeah, 0.0003%.
So did you have any other women in your
when I went to school, it was 200 men to every woman. And so you had to really just stand your ground, really demand that respect. And then once they get to know you, then absolutely brothers. And then once I actually got to my unit, I was around more women, but still the ratio was so small.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So you were in a radio what did you do?
I was aviation radio repair. Okay. And my unit was one of the first to go to Desert Storm.
Oh, wow.
But they went so quickly, they said no women in combat. And so my unit left, and there were 12 of us that stayed behind, women and then a couple of injured guys. And it was really a difficult time, just watching everybody else go, not feeling like you're contributing, even though, staying behind, like I was on guard duty nonstop. But so I still did my part. But at that time, it was talks of weapons of mass destruction. And we were going through mustard gas training. Like you had no idea what you're getting into. And so now I just have such respect for all those that have served in Iraq and Afghanistan because I know the training they went through, and I just give them a safe space to share.
We have a good friend that's a Army Ranger. And I think he's done finally, but he did a lot of deployments.
Yes.
I don't know. I did not marry a military person on purpose. Let's see. You took on a software developer role after that. That's very interesting. How did you end up at CH2M Hill? I never know what it is.
Yeah, it was CH2M Hill. They're since bought out by Jacobs. Yeah. So I was married to a Marine, and he got orders out here to Denver. And so that's what brought me here. And so I just went through a temp agency, and this guy was going out for back surgery, and they needed somebody to work in their data center. And I didn't have any computer experience other than doing my resume. And but I had this technical background. So they brought me in, and I started picking things up quick. And then they decided to move their company headquarters out to Denver. And so they were doing a bunch of hiring, and so they kept me on. And I ended up being there for 20 years. I evolved into this software developer. So it really is crazy. I just happened to be at the right place at the right time.
Wow, that's really crazy. So, so what prompted you to take the leap to coaching?
So when I was in corporate, when I moved to Colorado, I was fortunate that I met some friends that were really adventurous. And I didn't grow up with money or traveling or anything like that. So they're like, hey, we're going to go mountain biking from Telluride to Moab. And I was like, okay, I didn't even own a bike. I'm like, yeah, sign me up. That sounds cool. So over time, I kept doing more and more things with my friends in my spare time. And health and fitness was always a passion of mine, just going to the gym. For me, I think just the Marine Corps in general, just that strength, like as long as I'm feeling strong, like I have to keep nurturing that. Yeah. And so in my personal life, like I kept doing that, and then my career was taking off. But for me, it's always been that big picture that how you show up, even in your business, like just whether or not you're happy and you're, enjoying life, like it all feeds into each other, and people tend to compartmentalize a lot. And so it's been one of those things that just, it drove me crazy along the way, like just watching different people struggle from that. And so I knew that I wanted to interact more with people. Like there were days I could go in and sit in my cubicle and put on music and just write code all day and not talk to anybody. And I was missing that side. I felt like it was time for a new chapter.
I love it. I think it's interesting that I actually really didn't realize how much like my jobs had impacted the rest of my life and how I felt like, or how I interacted with my kids, or how I interacted with my husband, or like what my energy levels and stuff were until I left. And then I was like, oh, my husband actually just hop jobs too. And he's like, this is what it's like to work somewhere where people are happy and like it here and like care about each other and stuff.
Yep.
Because it's a completely different culture. It's one that, people are like happy to be there. And he's like, I guess he was talking to somebody who was also new, and they're like, it's kind of odd. They're all really happy, you know?
Yep.
And it's like, that's what it's supposed to be like. And I've been telling him for a while, it's like, the culture's crap, you got to get out, you know, whatever. Bringing us all down. And he's finally dead. And it's just been so interesting to watch him like be like, wow.
Yep. And you don't know what you don't know. Like if you're
Right.
just cruising along and you're doing your project and you have your coworkers that you enjoy and you commiserate with, like that's just how it is.
Yeah. He's also, you know, the company he's working for now, like also understands that you can't really project manage and do, but he was doing and trying to project manage. And then it was a whole disaster.
Yeah. I had to deal with that too.
Yeah. It doesn't work. Great. So there are lots of coaches, and I put them in my thing because there's a lot of business coaches or mentor coaches or, you know, I don't know what you all call each other, but each with a different approach. What makes your program different?
You know, you talk about all the different coaches, you know, trying to find a way to express myself and like what makes me different and studying all these other people. I remember pretty early on in my journey, a girl posted in a Facebook group like, oh, I got my confidence coach certification. It's like, what? Like, and so I'm like, yeah, I was certified in confidence. It's called boot camp. And so it's
called deadlifts.
Yeah. For me, it really has been that power. I think people, I mean, right now, empowerment is such a big trendy word, but I think that people are afraid to really unleash that side to themselves. And so for me, that's like it, being that encourager and lifting people up and realizing like, I don't have to be afraid of my background. I don't have to be afraid of all these things I accomplished. It's not bragging. It's who I am and really start to own all that they are. And so I think that is really what makes a difference because confidence and self-doubt, it shows up in all kinds of ways. And even people that don't think they have a confidence issue, simple things like procrastination. Like if you procrastinate, a lot of times there's this like hidden confidence thing, like worried about what people are going to think or you're going to fail, you know. So
or like feeling like you don't know or you don't have enough to offer. I think for me, I'm laughing because we've got goals and stuff up over here. So, you know, Steve and I were talking about, you should do a mastermind. I'm like, okay. I know what I know,
Yes.
right? And I do have a lot to offer. So he's just like this and this and this and this. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay, great. And so it's just a pause to like remember what we do know, you know, what we are experts at. I'm an expert at outside eyes and processes and systems. You know, I can look at something and be like, okay, let's process this. So, the confidence, I think, to also like to do the work to figure out what you're really good at too, or to like to know what is a good energy expenditure for you
and what you're actually really enjoying.
Yeah, and that's a lot of it too. I have realized having my own business, I was like, I'm just going to do tax returns, and I'm like, I hate doing tax returns, like the actual tax returning.
Yeah,
I want nothing to do with that. But I learned that by actually going and doing other things like podcasting and all of that. And I was like, that sounds horrible.
Yeah. It's all a big experiment.
It is all a big experiment. That is very true.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter like what level you're at. Like if you're at $1 million and you want to go to $3 million, like there's that whole confidence. Like, do I belong in that room of the other $3 million earners? And so, or even just when you're ready to start your podcast, like it's just little baby steps, but they're big to that person taking that next step.
Gotten a lot better at leaps.
Yeah, so have I.
When we started the podcast, 2018 was the year that I said yes to things that were scary. The podcast was terrifying. The Spartan Beast was even more terrifying, and I said yes to both of those things. And I was like, okay, I'm done for a little bit. We all have to recoup. But it's pretty funny. Never doing the Spartan again, but you know. So your 3 value pillars are courage, confidence, and commitment. Why those 3?
Well, like I said, the confidence is just like the base of everything. And then the courage and the commitment. And so that commitment really is like, well, what do you want your life to look like? Because even right now, like if you're in business and things are going really well, like that is not going to define your life. It's that big picture of what you're really driving for. And then just having that courage to keep pivoting and trying new things and really start to explore to see, well, what else is next or what else am I capable of? And so I think that it's the way that I drive my life. Like, where do I need more courage? How can I show up? Like, what am I committed to?
I think a lot of people, I love that you do the commitment because we talk about goal planning all the time. And a lot of us don't realize that we have our businesses for something else or for something we want on the back end, or because a lot of the time we just don't know that we do, but it's in our mind, but we're not actually making steps to get there a lot of the time. But I ask people all the time, so what does your business give you? And they're like, well, it gave me my salary from my old... And no. What is your business going to give you? Like, why are you even here? And people are like, oh, people don't ask me that,
Yep.
What do you want?
Yeah. And it's not about balance, because when you're really excited about something and you're lit up, and you want to go all in, that's fine, as long as you feel like you're not like neglecting something. Like if you're neglecting your family to really do that thing, then it'll eventually catch up with you. So I think that, finding those things that light you up, but also making sure that you're keeping you're stoking the fires that need to be stoked.
Yeah. I've been pretty bad at that lately. I was making Trello boards at 7:00 last night, but it's really our goal planning time plus our ramp up time for tax season. It's just like I have to, a lot of this stuff just needs to be mapped out for me so I can start executing. My husband's like, you're still, I'm coming to bed. So tell us about your retreats.
So the retreats, like I said, when I moved to Colorado, I met these friends and I was doing these things, and I realized like how much personal growth I would have in those moments. And so when I started my business, I knew that was something I wanted from the very beginning, but I had this story in my head that it was going to be this big undertaking and I wasn't ready. And all of a sudden one day I just had the epiphany, like I've been doing this for decades with friends. Like now I'm just going to charge people to come with me. And so, I believe in that total immersion because we could have this really great conversation. It could spark ideas for you, and then off you'll go about your day.
Yep.
Whereas if you actually escape, all these business owners, they work so hard for something. You talk about like, what are you working for? You have this vision of freedom, but you're not like taking that time for freedom. So to be able to give somebody this experience that challenges them, because there are all kinds of yoga retreats. But for me, it's those little moments that scare you. Like I took a group to Belize and we went swimming with sharks. So and they really are pretty mellow. There's laying on the bottom, but in your head, you got this story like I'm gonna get my arm chewed off. And then all of a sudden, by the end, you're petting them and trying to hold them, and you realize like it really isn't so bad. And so it's that. Yes, it's that powerful week, but then the best part about it is that once they leave, there's that added just fuel to them, and then they feel more confident. So then they do something a little bit differently in their business, and then next thing you know, it just starts to just snowball and take effect.
That's really cool. So I guess that was one of my next questions was, how does your retreat programming help entrepreneurs fast track their growth? So is it through like just higher tolerance for fear?
So I've done a couple of different kinds of retreats. So I've done like beach villas, like luxury villa. I really make it a point where
I want to do that
one, where they just show up.
That's my kind of thing.
And they don't have to worry about anything. And then to be around other like-minded people to have those conversations. And so those tend to be a more transformational. It's a lot of deep work. And so it's once they leave, all of a sudden they start to realize like these things we had been talking about, they see it start to crop up in their life that they just tolerated before.
That's really cool.
And so all of a sudden they're like my last retreat, I had a girl message me like 6 weeks afterwards, out of nowhere, just said, "You changed my life on the deepest level." And because it's a lot of time, it's that you have to start seeing it show up. But the one, like my upcoming one is Portugal. We're going to be biking along the coast. And so it's much more physical. And the thing that I love about that is you have to get from point A to point B. Like there is no other option. You're not going to call a taxi. Like you will get through. And to have somebody like me, being the Marine, encouraging them, like letting them know that they can do it. Once they do that, one of my clients said, "This makes me feel stronger than I ever thought possible." And next thing you know, she'd been working like on $35,000 to $5,000 projects. And next thing you know, she was doing $30,000 proposals. And she told me, she said, "I never could have talked those numbers if we didn't have that experience."
That's amazing transformation.
Yes.
For somebody to go to 30,000.
And a lot of people will hire
to do that.
Yeah, a lot of people will hire business coaches because they're like, oh, you want to make more money? Hire this business coach. But behind the scenes, they're doing a lot of personal development, and people don't realize that. They're like getting in there. And so for me, it's like, let's just cut to the chase. Like, let's go on that personal and then business development. And like you, I'm a very systems driven person from my software days. And so to figure out, well, how can we make things more efficient for you?
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Hold on. Okay, you just did that. All right. So what's coming down the pipeline for you guys after Portugal in March?
So actually, after Portugal, I plan on doing some local retreats here in Colorado.
Oh, cool.
Shorter ones, because a lot of business owners, it's really hard to get away for that length of time, especially if they're going to do it. They're going to want to spend it with their family. So I've recognized that, and I have all kinds of connections here in Colorado. So
yurts. Is there going to be yurts?
There could be yurts.
There could be yurts. I always laugh about the yurts. My husband's like, we're going to go stay in yurts. I'm like, okay, bye. I don't camp. There's no camping.
Yeah. 3 days of my tolerance for camping.
Probably 48 hours. Because then I'll be like, I need a shower. An actual shower. No. So the shower I have to pay
Solar
for.
shower.
Yeah, no. So before I ask my last question, what was the easiest way for people to find you?
TamiMcVay.com. I tend to hang out on Facebook the most, but I am on all the different social media channels.
Awesome. You're on LinkedIn also.
Yes.
And we'll link everything in the description box. Yes. But there's a lot of good stuff on the website.
Yes. And then on Facebook, I do live videos a lot too.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. Well, I need to hop on there. Awesome. So final question. What is the one thing every entrepreneur could do today to make a positive impact on their lives and their business well-being?
Ooh, good one. A positive impact. Honestly, I think what I found in my experience is really giving back in some way. Like people underestimate the power of volunteering. And it doesn't have to be like this really big endeavor. Just the whole pay it forward that can make all the difference, especially if you're struggling. Like all of a sudden you help somebody so simple that you just realize like how blessed you really are and how grateful you are. That's the thing about the retreats too. Like you get away and yes, there's that experience, but it's also a reminder of what everything you have going for you here and the opportunities that are available to you.
I love that.
So the more you get out there and help, the more opportunities will come your way.
I love that. And there's so many different ways to help.
Oh,
so
yes.
I used to spend a lot of time at our church running the kids' stuff. And I stopped doing that. But now I find myself, $20 here, $50 here, people who need help getting on their feet, just Venmoing them some money. There's a lot of ways that you can help others with your businesses and with your, it doesn't have to be a ton of time.
Yep. And a lot of times when people are volunteering, they're doing something, like say you speak all the time at your church, but then all of a sudden if you have to speak at your business on stage, you're terrified. And so if you can also realize like you've been doing this, like just in my retreats, like realize I've been doing that for decades with friends. And so, volunteering is a good way to practice where there isn't a lot of skin in the game.
That's awesome. Yeah. You said there's e-bikes.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So Portugal, people have the option to do e-bikes and those things are like mopeds.
What is the longest leg?
The very first day is 44 miles. Oh, so overall, we'll ride about 150 miles for the week.
I did 144 in 2 days. Y'all can do that.
That's great.
And I died, but
And the great thing is like, that's your job for the day.
Yeah, that's all you have to do.
Yeah, so you ride a little bit, like, oh, let's go check out this castle. And then, let's go ride a little bit and let's have some tapas. And so it really is a cool way to see a country.
Yeah, that's much funner than just trying to do 70 miles a day.
Yeah. Or all-inclusives.
Oh, yeah. That's fun.
Yeah.
There's all-inclusive where you can ride bikes around there.
Oh,
properties. Yeah. That's kind of my bike riding.
Yeah.
Awesome, Tami. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been fun.
Thank you so much for listening or watching. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, or wherever you prefer to listen. If you learned something and found some useful information to apply to your business today, please consider giving us a thumbs up and a review. Until next week, be abundant.